Hello, I'm Alexander, and welcome to Trailheads and Titans, and welcome to my third episode. Join me as we learn from the Titans who paved the way. In this episode, my guest is Mr. Rick Rule. He's the founder of Rule Investment Media and former president of Sprott. Thanks, Mr. Rick, for joining me today.
It's a pleasure to be with you, and congratulations starting in this business so young.
My first question is, can you please introduce yourself and share a bit about what you do?
Name is Rick Rule, as stated in the introduction. 72 years old. I have been primarily employed as an investor and a builder of financial services businesses around natural resources and precious metals. My career began in 1974, and I've been continually employed for over 50 years in natural resources and financial services. I failed retirement completely, and I remain a very busy investor and a very busy businessman.
Well, and I've heard about you starting up a bank called Battle Bank. Can you please explain about it a bit?
Yes, as I stated in my introduction, I'm familiar with two businesses, natural resources and financial services. I have been around the banking business for a very long time, being deeply involved in community banking in the United States and deeply involved since the year 2000, starting an online bank called Everbank, which grew to be one of the largest online banks in the country before we sold it. Having sold it, the people that we sold it to changed the focus of that bank and left our existing customer base with them orphans. And so we're starting a new bank, an online bank with no branches, save one, a bank that will continue the traditions of Everbank, which is to say non-confusing deposit products, the ability to bank in 20 currencies, not just the US dollar, and in particular, blending two parts of my background, a bank that will lend to individuals against their physical holdings of gold, silver, platinum, and palladium. So we will make what are in effect margin loans for people who are believers in precious metals as an alternative to currencies.
Thank you. And what advice would you give to someone like my age who wanted to learn about investing, and where do you think they should start or decide which companies or projects to invest in?
I think it's critical for somebody your age to read books outside of the curriculum that is prescribed for you by your school. I would begin with a book called Economics in One Lesson by Hazlitt. This tells you about the economy the way it really is, rather than the economy the way that the big thinkers in government would have you believe it would. So that's the first book you read. Once you have an understanding of the way of the world in terms of economics, the best investment book ever written, relative to the effort required to read it, is The Intelligent Investor by Ben Graham. So absolutely read that book. Pay particular attention to the chapters on margin of safety and the psychology of investors, the manic depressive nature of investors. If that book is of interest to you, the next book you have to read is Securities Analysis. This is simply the best book ever written about investing, but it is not an easy read. I warned you, it's not an easy read. And you don't have to buy this book. You can get it at any good library. So do that. Once you have read Securities Analysis, and by the way, I never stop reading it. When I finish, I begin to read it again, 10 pages at a time, 12 pages at a time, 15 pages at a time. But once you've completed the first read of Securities Analysis, then what you do is you go online and you download Warren Buffett's letters to Berkshire Hathaway shareholders, the annual letter to shareholders, from the period 1977 until today. This is the best free installment lesson on investing relative to the economy that's ever been written, and it's free by a man that's probably the greatest investor of all times. Finally, there is a book called Human Action by Ludwig von Mises. The books that I've just given you are all books about how investing works. Human Action is a book about why investing works. It talks about individual initiative and volition, and it is a very hard book. It was written in very turgid German and translated into very turgid English. It will be a particular challenge for somebody who's a native Spanish speaker like yourself. But it is a book that when I first read it, I was probably 18. It answered a lot of questions that I had about how the world worked and why the education that I was receiving from the state didn't explain the world as I saw it. So I would read the 4 books, and I would read the Warren Buffett letters to shareholders. If you do that, not just buy the books, but read the books and think about them, you will, just by that act, know more about investing than probably 95% of your peers. At some point in time, Alejandro, when you've done that, I'll give you 5 more books to read, but I've given you plenty now.
Thank you. I'll read them. But can you share a time when taking some sort of risk led to something big in your life or career?
Well, I'll give you 2 examples, both of them important to me. I came of age as a businessman in the decade of the 1970s, which was a period of turmoil and rapid inflation. And because I was in natural resource-based businesses, but in particular in the precious metal side of the business, I did extremely well. And I confused a bull market with brains. In other words, I thought I was doing well because I was a genius. I ignored the fact that the gold price went from $35 an ounce to $850 an ounce, or that the oil price went from $2 a barrel to $30 a barrel. What I learned, to my chagrin, was that markets work. And the cure for high prices was high prices. When the inflation collapsed and commodity prices collapsed, my personal balance sheet collapsed too. And I went from being a very wealthy, and by the way, very hubris-ridden young man, to having a net worth below zero. I took a lot of risk, but I took ill-considered risks. I didn't understand the nature of the risks that I was taking. And the consequence of that is that I paid a very, truly ugly price. As I say, I went from being a very wealthy young man to having a net worth below zero. By the time the early part of the 1990s had occurred, I had worked my way through that process, and I was better able to understand risk. And there was nobody in the market that was willing to take early stage company risks at that point in time in natural resources, because we'd gone through a 10-year bull market. Stuff was way, way, way too cheap. The consequence of that is, having learned the lessons that markets work, when the whole commodity sector, but particularly the means of production, were selling at huge discounts to what they were worth, it was very obvious to me that commodity prices, commodity producers' prices were coming back. And I went all in, really, truly all in, knowing this time that I wouldn't overstay my leave. When the sector returned to favor, that I would sell at least enough of my holdings that I would recoup my capital and have the rest as a free ride. And the consequence of that is that in the period sort of 1988 to 1995, my portfolio grew by 50 or 60% compounded for 7, 8, 9 years. It was truly an extraordinary circumstance, and it was a circumstance that was made the better because when the sector had returned to favor in the middle part of the decade of the 90s, I did a lot of selling. I took a lot of money off the table. The lesson there, of course, was taking considered risks, but understanding that markets work. The cure for high prices is always high prices. The cures for low prices is always low prices. Commodities-based businesses are capital-intensive cyclical businesses. And what you will learn, Alejandro, in resources is that you are either a contrarian or you are about to become a victim. I learned both lessons.
And another question would be like, if you could attribute your success overall to just one factor, what would it be? And can you explain why it would be that?
Abiding curiosity. My strength is curiosity. I like to learn. The process of making money for me is an intellectual exercise. Think of it as sort of three-dimensional backgammon. And in order to succeed in a business that requires study, you have to like to study. In addition to understanding how things work, which most people don't bother to do, you need to understand why things work. And because I have focused on natural resources and later financial services, I haven't developed any broad-based expertise. Unlike Warren Buffett, I'm not happy in 200 industries. I'm happy in 2. But I have a deep knowledge in those 2 and an abiding curiosity so that I'm competing with other players who know less about the subject and whose knowledge base isn't increasing because they're not curious.
And do you think there are any habits or routines apart from reading those books that you do every day that have helped you like succeed?
I learned 1989 or 1990, ironically, to stop worrying about money, to start worrying about adding value, to be the best I could be at what I did, and to rely on making money for other people as the key to making money for myself. And as I started applying the lens of how do I make myself better as a student, and how do I use the knowledge to improve the financial well-being of others, ironically, when I stopped worrying about making money, I started making a lot of money. So I would suggest that you develop your curiosity, but you develop your curiosity through the lens of how can you be a better student than your competitors? How can you be a better investor than your competitors? How can you be a better businessman than your competitors? How can you deliver more value to your customers, whoever you decide your customers are, than your competitors? And if that becomes your focus, if that becomes your prism, you'll do great.
What did you studied and what do you think like led up to all of what you accomplished?
My major in university was natural resource finance. It was a subset of the commerce faculty at the University of British Columbia in Canada. And it was an interesting program because I was either allowed or forced, depending on your point of view, in addition to studying commerce, to study geology, to study engineering, to study forestry. Now, I need to say that at a certain point in time, when I was in university, my goals in university were really to get a piece of paper to start making money. I wasn't there for any grand purpose. And so I dropped out of university. I found by my last year that university was interfering with my education. I found too, which is why I asked you to read the book Economics in One Lesson, that economics as taught in North American universities is incomprehensible and wrong. And I think in terms of developing your own education, Alejandro, you need to take control of it. You can't leave the process of learning what you want to get out of life, unfortunately, to the school system or to the university system. I was very fortunate in the fact that when I was in university, I looked at what was on offer, what the menu of the courses were, and I selected the courses that I thought would be of benefit to me, of my interest. I wasn't a passive participant. And I would encourage you to employ that same discipline. The university, if you choose to go to university, exists for the benefit of the institution, for the benefit of the professors, for the benefit of the government, for the benefit of the trustees. If you benefit, it's up to you. But don't trust them to shape your education. Take control of your own education.
So based off what you're telling me, you would say that that you should learn from the schools and everything, but also that you should always have curiosity to learn from other things and like from those books that you told me, right? And always just wanting to keep learning from other sources.
Probably the other way around. Take control of your life, learn from your own sources, and use the school to augment that.
Oh, okay. And what do you think are going to be the most important careers of the future?
That's too broad a question. I would ask you to consider, in terms of choosing a career, what subject you're so passionate about that going to work will be fun. You will outcompete somebody if you work at something viscerally. If you define work as a mildly unpleasant task that you perform to sustain your lifestyle, I haven't worked since the decade of the 70s. I have immersed myself in a field where, although I try very hard, I strive, I don't work. It's like play to me. The consequence of that is that I'm competing with people who can't compete with me. They want to work 8 hours a day as opposed to 12. And when they're at work, they're dreaming of driving a Lamborghini or chasing girls or something like that. All laudable goals, of course. But they can't compete with me because I'm focused on the task at hand while they're not. So I would ask you to consider what you're so passionate about that you add value faster and in a greater quantum than any of your competitors. I will tell you that there are huge skills shortages in natural resources. The last generation where natural resources were in favor was my generation. And my generation is literally, not figuratively, dying. And there has been a 40-year gap since people your age applied themselves to the natural resources business. My first year at the University of British Columbia, if my memory serves me well, there were almost 300 young people that enrolled as freshmen in geological engineering. My understanding is that last year, 10 did. That will tell you something about the skills gap because those 10 people have to replace the 300 people that enrolled when I was a youngster. But I wouldn't, if I were you, confine yourself to extractive industries simply because there are opportunities there. I would only do it if you were passionate about it. I would encourage you too to learn how to employ artificial intelligence for the benefit of a customer. Don't be competing with the machine. learn how to organize and systematize the knowledge from the machine to the benefit of your customer. If you learn how to do that, um, you'll have an extremely bright future. If you apply yourself to something that you are deeply passionate about.
Thinking overall about your journey, and just before we wrap up, what is one big piece of advice you would give to your younger self, or to someone just starting out?
Two pieces of advice, probably. You have two assets that matter: your knowledge and your reputation. Always work on both. Your personal brand, your reputation, is what will enable you to use your knowledge. Conversely, your knowledge and employing it to the benefit of others will enhance your reputation. Knowledge and reputation are amazing assets. Their product can be taxed, but they can't be taxed. They can't be stolen. They can be lost. I mean, they can be wasted. But if you concern yourself with continually improving your knowledge base, and guarding and expanding your reputation, being known as a good person, a competent person, an honest person, a nice person, it sounds like an intangible. But the truth is that that will allow you to advance more rapidly than any other single thing you can do. In terms of the world, you are who the world believes you to be, your reputation. So worry about your knowledge, worry about your reputation, and don't worry a whole lot about much else.
Thank you, Mr. Rick Rule, and thank you to everyone for tuning in to Trailheads and Titans. Especially huge thank you again to Mr. Rick Rule for sharing your journey, your tips, your insights, and everything else. And your story will inspire many, many people, especially young people like me. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow Trailheads and Titans for more conversations with leaders who are blazing new trails. Until next time.